In the case involving the law professor and senior counsel Diarmuid Phelan and the accusation that he murdered Keith Conlon at his farm in 2022, yesterday the jury was told, the jury at the Central Criminal Court were told by senior counsel for the prosecution, for the state, that the evidence shows that Diarmuid Phelan, the law professor, is guilty of the murder of a trespasser on his farm. Prosecution counsel said that the evidence included that of 4 foreign nationals who witnessed the shooting of Keith Conlon while they were working on Mr. Phelan's farm in Tallaght in February 2022. Mr. Conlon, Callum Coleman and Robin Duggan were using a dog to hunt down badgers and foxes while trespassing on the farm that day, the jury was told. This is part of the closing speech by the prosecution. A student from Germany, Hannah Fellner, had said her recollection was that Mr. Conlon had his back to Mr. Phelan when the accused shot him in the head, counsel said. She recalled the gunshot coming as a complete surprise because she perceived the situation immediately prior to that as a verbal conflict between Mr. Phelan, Mr. Conlon and Mr. Coleman. Senior counsel urged the jury not to let grotesque, graphic and in some cases criminal videos and photos taken from Mr. Conlon's phone concerning dog blooding and badger baiting inspire a visceral reaction in them. Keith Conlon, she said, is not on trial for the morality of baiting foxes or blooding dogs or badger baiting, she said, adding that the jury might feel the same about tweed-jacketed men and women riding horses and chasing foxes. She said the jury had heard evidence of many incidents on Mr. Phelan's farm, including some involving trespass, criminal damage, arson, theft, and people coming onto the lands to drink and take drugs. She said that she had no doubt Mr. Phelan was mithered by that, and who would not have the greatest sympathy for him over that level of activity. However, she said neither Mr. Conlon nor the other 2 trespassers were involved in any prosecutions or investigations regarding those incidents. On the very morning of the fatal shooting, she said, 2 men were fixing the farm gate which had been criminally damaged. She asked if Mr. Phelan had simply had enough by that afternoon and reached the end of his tether. While not trying to minimise the aggressive tone of some language used by Mr. Conlon towards Mr. Phelan, Miss Lacey said it was clear based on the evidence that Mr. Conlon had turned to go before the fatal shot was fired. There was nothing in the encounter that could have led Mr. Phelan to believe he was being presented with such a threat of force to justify producing a revolver from his pocket and repeatedly firing it, she said. Miss Lacey, that senior counsel for the state, has begun closing the case in the prosecution of the trial of Mr. Phelan. He's pleaded not guilty to the murder of Keith Conlon in February 2022. Conlon, a father of 4, was pronounced brain dead at the Tallaght Hospital 2 days after he was shot. The prosecution case is that after Mr. Phelan shot a lurcher dog belonging to Mr. Coleman, there were heated exchanges with the trespassers and Mr. Conlon and Mr. Coleman followed him up a field. The prosecution case is 2 shots were fired into the air by Mr. Phelan from his Smith & Wesson revolver and a 3rd penetrated the body of Mr. Conlon. The prosecution case is when the 3rd shot was fired, the deceased was shot in the back of the head as he turned away and, in the circumstances, Mr. Phelan had the requisite intent for murder. Mr. Phelan, the trial heard, told Gardaí in interviews he believed if he had not acted immediately he would have got me. He said he was terrified, he said he was stressed and scared shitless. The jury was told that the defence case, as the prosecution understood it, was the discharge of the firearm was a legitimate act of self-defence, not done with the intent to penetrate the body of Mr. Conlon. The prosecution's closing address will continue today before the judge and the jury of 9 men and 3 women. Then you will have the defence senior counsel with closing speech to the jury. Then the judge will instruct the jury as to the law and as to the questions they must answer, and then the matter will be placed in the hands of the jury, who will decide then on either the conviction or the acquittal of Mr. Phelan of the murder of Keith Conlon. Hope you find the video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you hit the thumbs up button down below. Thank you very much.